I'm Richard Aboulafia. I'm a managing director at Aerodynamic Advisory, which is a boutique aerospace and defense consultancy. I've been in the business as a consultant and an analyst for 38 years, or thereabouts. And I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I look at the industry, military, commercial, private aircraft, and everything related in the supply chain.
So, did you first, whenever you first got into the industry, did you start out with an aerospace consulting job, or was it kind of just regular consulting?
Yeah, all I've done is aerospace. All I wanted to do was aerospace. I guess from the standpoint of the next generation of leaders, I'm kind of like Mr. Bad Example. I mean, I just got ridiculously lucky. I have my master's degree is in war studies and from Britain, King's College London,
Mhm.
looking at defense technology, and again got super lucky to actually get a job in the last days of the Cold War looking at defense programs, but quickly pivoted to the commercial side of things. So all I've done is consulting and analysis in aerospace and defense.
Okay, so how do you get into like a consulting role in aerospace and defense? Is there like a path that you kind of wish you would have taken?
Well, as since I consider myself about the luckiest person you're going to meet, it almost seems wrong to say I wish I'd taken a different path. I'm just deeply grateful, you know. Um, I think probably the alternative way is to be as ecumenical as possible about consulting. So you join a consultancy that does have broader exposure to other sectors of the economy and hope to sort of get into the aerospace side. I just happened to get super lucky, but it's not impossible, right? I'm lucky, but I'm not ridiculously lucky, maybe. And of course, the way there is to affiliate yourself with as many people in the industry as possible and to, well, make yourself heard, whether that means writing something from the school newspaper to LinkedIn to anything, or just, talking to people you respect in the industry. That would appear to be the best way forward.
So you told me that you started back in the final days of the Cold War. So looking back, how has the aerospace industry changed the most since you started tracking it back then?
Yeah, boy, big changes indeed. We went through this post-Cold War period
Mhm.
where the defense budget was really nowhere globally. And over the past few years, for reasons that are obvious from the headlines, I suppose, it's come roaring back. So this is the first simultaneous civil and military upturn that I've seen in my career. That's pretty remarkable. And similarly, this is the first time, I like to joke, I don't really have a day job. I used to be the guy who looked at markets. There's no reason to look at markets right now. Markets are incredibly strong. It's the supply side of things that's problematic. So the most valuable people in the business are busy looking at supply bottlenecks and constraints. Some of the best, I think, are on my team, but there are a lot of good people out there looking at what the various obstacles are for the industry ramp up.
Okay. So as far as today and about like COVID and stuff, how would you describe the current state of the commercial aviation and has it fully recovered from COVID-19?
Yeah, in terms of demand, 100%. You look at, we keep a dashboard of commercial aviation indicators and travel demand, revenue passenger kilometers, airline revenue, 100%, 100% and beyond. A couple of areas of concern, but for the most part, it's been a fantastic recovery, a lot more robust and faster than I expected. I think most people expected. However, the supply side again has been bedeviled by all kinds of challenges, some of them geopolitical.
Mhm.
Having a lot of Russian milled product, titanium especially, come offline, problematic. Another big issue is this is the first recovery I've seen where, well, we haven't led the way. Aerospace normally leads the way in a production recovery. This time, no, not at all, which means we're the last in line to hire people, order things, whatever else,
Mhm.
and we're a little bit more exposed to inflation as a consequence of that dynamic.
So, what about sustainability? Because I know it's a super hot topic right now. Based on what you've seen with the markets and the aerospace industry, are we are we chasing sustainability for real solutions, or are we just trying to make more sustainable systems to react to what the public is saying and like all the regulations?
Yeah, do you want the good news or the bad news, right? And I say this as an environmentalist who believes in sustainability, but I think it's no longer a high priority for a lot of people. As a matter of fact, the New York Times today has a piece about sustainability not being what it was, not just in the US, but in a lot of parts of Europe. And certainly there are big parts of Asia and the Middle East that maybe never really had it as a big
Yeah.
priority. So I think back to the sort of the heyday of sustainability discussions, which strangely were just before and just after the pandemic, and everything that was being looked at. So much of that seems to be deprioritized. Now, having said that, here's the good news. And I say this with pride because of the goofy nature of airline economics, we're the most self-disciplined industry on the planet. That is to say, because airline profit margins are really narrow, not a lot of margin because competition is so fierce.
Mhm.
Everyone is dependent upon the manufacturers doing what they've been doing since the dawn of the jet age, which is improving things by 1 or 2% per year on
Mhm.
average. I don't know of any other industry on the planet that's done that, spent the last 70 or 80 years getting 1% or 2% better per year in fuel consumption and emissions. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll continue, but that's another topic.
Of course. So you've worked with many OEMs and suppliers. So what do successful aerospace companies do differently when it comes to their strategies?
Yeah, great question. And that's changing too, right? I mean, obviously, in terms of having a diversified portfolio of customers, technologies and programs, and then paying attention to the counter-cyclical nature of markets. So, for example, having a heavy exposure to the aftermarket, not just new build OE, is absolutely essential. Um, Being big enough. There are certainly some wonderful niche companies out there, but critical mass is rewarded in this industry, no question. So those are the things they do well. I would argue that the best are increasingly adopting kind of a multi-domestic strategy. It used to be, globalize, sell all over the world. Now I think you have to fit in more in other places around the world.
Right.
It means having a greater industrial presence, a greater legal presence, just to be able to be perceived of as a trusted partner is such a key part of strategies moving forward because so many countries want to break into this industry and so many more want sovereign capabilities, especially in defense.
So over the past couple of years, we've seen a wave of aerospace startups. Do off the top of your head, do you think that any of them really stand out as real contenders?
Yeah, good question. And maybe it's my mindset as a critic. It I look at them and I think, oh boy, there's just an awful lot of wasted capital here. But having said that, absolutely, on the sustainability front, there are some smaller hybrid electric manufacturers. I wish them the absolute best. Very intriguing. I don't think anyone from the vertical, the eVTOL world is terribly compelling, but in terms of conventional takeoff and landing, some interesting ones. And who knows, maybe an eVTOL company will survive and prove me wrong, but it sure doesn't seem that way. So you look at the Electras and the Betas, some intriguing stuff there. I don't know about the business plan, but in terms of technology development, intriguing. The one company I like most of all the startups, Jet Zero, because that market is guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. Will blended wing bodies be the future of jetliners? I can't tell you. Will they do it? No, they'll have to work with a lot of other people. But in terms of bringing innovation to an industry that seems stuck in its ways, very intriguing.
Okay, so about VTOLs, what do you think is like the biggest drawback behind why the VTOLs VTOL startup aerospace companies aren't going to be as compelling.
Well, a couple of issues. One is that the civil rotorcraft market for machines in that class just isn't very big. I mean, it's safely below $1 billion a year. Now, it could be they'll stimulate things, but I'm not sure how. I mean, piston and small turbine rotorcraft are plenty efficient, and they have a lot more experience, a lot more flexibility. So, you know, yes, again, intrigued by electric and hybrid electric, but verticality is an energy suck.
Yeah.
It just uses a monster amount of power. So, on many different levels, I just don't see where this is coming from. And for sheer humor value, a lot of them are now talking about military applications. I just don't get that at all because the range is tiny, and frankly, the military has many thousands of helicopters that are far more capable and flexible. So maybe, and an enthusiastic maybe to electric and to hybrid electric, but vertical hybrid and or vertical electric, I just don't see it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good response. So now when it comes to like the global power shifts, so could you explain a little bit to our audience that's unfamiliar with what are some of China's aviation ambitions for the future?
Yeah, China's got a very aggressive strategy both on the commercial side and the military side. On the military side, I mean, there's no denying whether it's hypersonic munitions or advanced targeting and sensing capabilities, or even just conventional systems like jet fighters and air-to-air missiles. They've made enormous strides. And also in terms of power projection, the fact that they've stood up a respectable carrier aviation capability over the last decade is pretty impressive. Now, the question becomes, of course, what do they do with it? Because, it's one thing to beat up on the Philippines and go after a few random specks in the South China Sea. It's another thing to say, Taiwan is ours, we're going to take it. And that, of course, is one of the greatest geopolitical risks the entire world faces. But it's not like they have the ability to go and project power, say, I don't know, the Persian Gulf, or to play some kind of stabilizing role in Africa peacekeeping operations or anything like that. There's not going to be a NATO dominated by China, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, okay, all this capability, what do they do with it? On the commercial side, intriguing, but there's a real problem in that they've put all of their efforts into, well, new jetliners like the C909, 919, and soon to be 929. But all of these are, well, they're basically heavily dependent upon Western systems, particularly engines. And that part of China's aerospace industry buildup is kind of lagging the prime integrator part. So there are a lot of weaknesses, concerns, flaws. But on the other hand, it would be foolish to bet against them, especially given the vacuum the US is creating by not being present in Asia. There was going to be a pivot towards Asia. Now, if anything, in the Trump administration's foreign policy, there's more of a pivot away from Asia. So again, I wouldn't bet against China in that kind of environment.
Okay, so you've made a lot of bold predictions over the years. So has there ever been a time where one of your predictions may have been wrong? And if you would you mind explaining that to us?
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
Great question. Appreciate you asking. The whole story of Canada's C Series maybe is kind of interesting. You know, I thought they'd run out of money. They did. I was right about that. But I didn't see the fact that, hey, it's a pretty good jet. And it is, right? And now
Yes.
that it's in Airbus's hands and they've got, of course, the deep pockets of Airbus, I think they're making a pretty good go of it and wish them all the best. Um, Couple of other things. I just didn't see the incredible strength of the business jet market. I spent the first couple decades of my career watching it almost like, oh, good for them. They're growing. And actually, I didn't see the great second half of the 90s growth spurt, and I didn't see its transformation in the 2000s. I guess I didn't make the connection between wealth creation and business aircraft demand. So when I started my job the market for business aircraft in today's money was like maybe 5 billion, and now it's five times that. That's
Mm.
pretty impressive. Um, I guess mea culpa, as they say, I didn't see that connection between wealth creation and business aircraft demand, especially since for a long time there was no such connection. There was more wealth, and yet it did nothing for the market. But all of a sudden, people said, "Oh, right, we have a very rich organization or company or country or whatever. Let's buy business jets," and it's worked out really well. Similarly, I did not see the implosion in regional aircraft. I mean, it was always an article of faith that regional aircraft would play a bigger role in the air transport system than you know than they do today, to be blunt. And as a consequence, I just can't believe it. But there's basically one regional manufacturer out there of any note. I didn't see that coming.
Okay, so now I always like to kind of finish off one of the questions with just some career advice for this younger generation. Now, if you were a student going into aerospace today, where would you kind of focus or center your career around? Would you do it around like startups, OEMs, some defense companies like Lockheed Martin, NASA, or even consulting? Do you have a specific path that would you place your bets in?
Well, everyone has their passion, right? So I wouldn't get in the way of people, with you. You mentioned rocketry. I go, it sounds wonderful. Not what I did. That sounds wonderful. Me, believe it or not, my passion up front was turbines. I really like turbine jet engines, So I think the most important lesson is whatever you love, that's what you do. And God knows I've been privileged to meet some people out there who were really into composite materials. Okay, wonderful, fantastic. Manufacturing, I know people who've started consultancies and gone into great careers just looking at the unique needs of manufacturing, shop floor layouts, whatever.
Yeah.
I know nothing about that. I can't respect those people enough. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. So I think the most important, it's a cliche, follow your passion. And
Hmm.
the other bit of advice I have is, in addition to talking as much as possible with people, you might have noticed I'm a talker, talking and listening, engaging, and also reading. I remember back in the day getting into this business, just just being voracious, and I guess as part of that, no matter how granular whether you're into turbines or composites or whatever, try to connect it to the bigger picture. What's the real world saying and doing? Is it interest rates? Is it global trade? Is it requirements for national defense and whatever else? Just don't neglect the bigger picture.